the ice and glaciers are melting. If this melting continues at this rate, we will have more natural disasters like droughts, floods, hurricanes. Why is that? The reason being, ice has a light color, which means it reflects more sunlight than any other surface. As ice melts, sunlight is not reflected and therefore heat is absorbed on the surface of the earth, which causes the earth to become warmer and results in a self-fulfilling cycle of warming. In this video, we will try to convince those who don't believe that humans are responsible for climate change. We will look at different examples which will convince you that there is no question that humans are responsible for climate change. Over time, we have been so obsessed with progress and fulfilling life that we did not think about the consequences of our actions. We have been pumping CO2 and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere at an alarming rate. We will look at several examples that prove beyond a reasonable doubt that most of the increase in greenhouse gases is from humans. One way we can confirm this is by looking at ice cores from the Arctic. The ice has traces of CO2 trapped in it, which goes back thousands of years. If we look at the chemical isotopes of carbon trapped in the ice, we can tell whether the carbon was from humans or natural causes. Now this tells us that we have not seen such a dramatic increase in CO2 in 800,000 years, and this increase coincides with the Industrial Revolution. I hope you are convinced, looking at this graph, that humans have contributed to climate change. Deforestation is another major cause of climate change. We have been so obsessed with building bigger cities and houses that we don't stop to think about the increasing levels of mining, logging, and ranching. These activities are responsible for climate change. We have cut down trees, but we haven't fully understood the consequences. Trees remove CO2 from the air as the carbon is captured during photosynthesis. By removing the trees, we are removing the natural carbon sink and upsetting the balance of the natural carbon cycle. Deforestation also directly causes global warming. One way to address deforestation is to create governmental policies that promote sustainable use of wood products. Like we see in this picture, we just need to find ways to live sustainably. We don't need to give up our modern day conveniences. We just need to make the right choices and encourage our governments to force sustainable use of forests. Over the years, humans have used synthetic fertilizers, but we have taken it too far, and this is another major contributor to greenhouse gases emissions. People need to fertilize the crops with a reasonable amount of nitrogen, but too much nitrogen will result in nitrogen oxide (NO2) emissions that don't help the production of crops. Livestock, such as cattle, are a large contributor to greenhouse gases. Cows produce methane in their usual digestive system, which is one of the critical greenhouse gases. Almost 40% of human CH4 emissions come from agriculture and waste. Half of this amount comes from the digestive systems of livestock. Cows, sheep, and goats have bacteria in their digestive system, which helps them digest the food and produce methane as a byproduct. If we continue in this fashion, our planet will be warmed to an extent that we will not be able to have beef. There should be more sustainable methods of beef production. We also need to think of other sources of protein. Recently, plant-based meats have been introduced to the market and are becoming more popular. Think about this. Eating 75 grams of beef, equivalent to a fast food hamburger, contributes to greenhouse gas emissions, equivalent to driving a car for 7,196 miles. Animal products, meat and dairy, need more resources. Instead of growing plants to feed all the animals and then eating the animals, let's eat the plants directly. If all of us switch to plant-based diets, that does not mean we can't enjoy burgers. As we all know, we can enjoy a Beyond Meat burger, which is made from peas, but tastes as good as a real burger. From our green farmland, let's take a dive into the ocean. Most marine organisms, such as shellfish and corals, need carbonate ions to survive. Entire ecosystems that depend on healthy corals are at risk of being destroyed. This in turn affects humans who depend on fishing as their main source of food and income. The increase of CO2 causes ocean acidification. When the acidity of the water rises, coral reefs cannot survive. The corals do not have enough carbonate to make their shells. Entire ecosystems that depend on healthy corals are at risk of being irreversibly destroyed. This in turn affects humans who depend on fishing as their main source of food and income. Changes to our lifestyle can help stop this damage to coral reefs. To wrap this video up, here are some important takeaways. Glaciers are melting, which causes sea level rise. As the sea levels rise, cities will experience high tide floods and more frequent and more destructive hurricanes across the world. We must be self-conscious about our actions and understand how the world is affected by our choices. Climate change has caused natural disasters and has cost the lives of people. It is obvious from scientific evidence, past studies, and data that the primary reason for climate change is our emitting of carbon dioxide, greenhouse gases, and cutting down trees and forests. Humans alone are responsible for climate change. There are no doubts about this anymore. The evidence is crystal clear.